And the grand total profit for the year of 2021 for our farm activities was...
Now, I'm sure a lot of you folks see our videos and see our tiny farm and wonder, how much can this guy possibly make farming?
I made $1.16.
Oh, that's great.
And in today's video, I'm gonna answer that question down to the penny. And I'm gonna show you guys just how much money we made farming in 2021, which has been our 4th season of farming. Release the Kraken! So many people wanna know, how much can you make with a tiny little duck flock, a small chicken flock, and a medium-sized flock of geese? Let loose the goose! I mean, and to be fair, we have other activities here on the farm. We have been focusing on growing trees for the last several years. We also just added cattle to the farm as well, so it's not just poultry, but we're primarily a poultry farm here at Goldshaw Farm. And I am most definitely a city slicker who moved out to northern Vermont in a very rural part of the state, in a state that overall is pretty rural. And I had zero agricultural background. You know, I grew up in the suburbs of central Connecticut. I spent the first 20 years of my adult life living in large metropolitan cities in the Northeast and in Washington, D.C., which is like, I guess, the southern border of the Northeast, maybe. And so this process of me starting a farm has been a long, slow build. One of those situations where I acquire new skills and learn how to do new things. And it actually all started with the ducks. I started with a flock of about 40 ducks back in 2018. That year, I'm not sure if I exactly made a profit because I didn't keep perfect records, but it came close to breaking even. My plan had been to start raising khaki Campbell ducks for eggs, and I would sell them locally here as well as to restaurants and to co-ops. And as you'll see in this video, that has actually shifted from being my primary focus. In 2019, we also added geese into the mix on the farm, and I started raising geese for meat. And in 2020, added more geese, and I also added selling fertilized eggs and selling live birds to part of our farm's business model. And last year, when I look at the sort of total books, when everything was all closed out, I made a profit of about $5,000, just a little bit over $5,000. So that's my revenue minus my expenses that left me with that $5,000 profit. This year's been kind of an interesting year for us because my plan was to try to hatch 150 goslings over the course of the spring, and I would raise most of those birds up for meat. But unfortunately, my hatching rates weren't all that successful, and I didn't quite do what I had planned to do. And I know that that question of will we make any money this year weighs heavily on a lot of folks who are watching our channel and following our story. When you look at it, actually, most small farm startups go belly up after their first 3 years. You know, this has essentially been our 4th season of farming, and I'm hoping to keep things afloat and hoping to be able to keep doing this. And truly, as I look at what we've done this year, we actually made a pretty big expansion of the farm. In fact, probably the biggest expansion was we added these guys to the farm, and it's been pretty cool having them here. Come here, Ariel. Come say hi. Can I boop you on the booper snoot? Oh, good girl. Hey, Curdy. Good to see you, boy. How are you doing? But just to clear it up right up front, the cattle and sort of what I've spent on the cattle won't factor into my profit or loss for this year. That's like a future growth business, and I'm keeping it essentially as like a separate P&L or profit and loss business. The first revenue from these guys won't even start to generate until next fall, and so, you know, I got a little time to wait on this one before I'm gonna be ready to share the numbers behind this. But I will say I probably spent, I don't know, maybe about $8,500 in total on raising these cattle and acquiring these cattle so far. That includes the cost of buying the livestock, that includes the cost of infrastructure, that includes the cost of hay for the winter to carry us all the way into early June of 2022. So that's all sunk costs that I'm just setting aside. And also, just to be very, very clear, this is not the total net profit for Goldshaw Farm LLC, which is my business. This is just specific to the farm operations. None of this information should be taken as investment data or, you know, generally accepted accounting practice data. This is simply just a dude who's been taking care of animals and running a side hustle, who has been keeping very close track of his expenses as well as his revenue, and he wants to share it with you guys so that you can see, if you ran a small farm like the size of ours, what could you actually expect to spend spend in terms of expenses, as well as what can you actually expect in terms of profit. And so that's really my primary purpose for putting out this video. I've tried to do the very best I can in terms of the accuracy of these numbers, and I've tried to make it as crisp as possible, but don't take any of this as investment advice. If you want to run a small farm like we run a small farm, you're gonna have to look at your own personal situation and personal context and see what makes sense for you. I'm offering this just solely as a look into our farm, as well as potential education for people thinking about doing something similar. Oh, Anna Green Gables, you're getting your own hay, that's good. I know everybody's been worried about her getting enough hay because she's been getting bullied by the rest of the herd, but she's actually doing pretty well. Everybody's actually settled into their winter area pretty nicely, actually. There is something very majestic about seeing these cattle up on the hill with the barn in the background. It gives me the chills every morning.
I got chills, they're multiplying.
Unlike the weather we've been having, I don't know if you noticed this, right? Here we are at the end of the year and not a snowflake on the ground right now. It's kind of unsettling. I think we're supposed to get another snowstorm tonight, so hopefully that'll make things at least look a little bit more normal. Hey, Ginny Barn Cat, how are you doing? Yeah, I know, I already turned off this fence, so we don't have to worry about it today. What's going on, Toby Dog? You seem like you're on high alert. What's up, my friend? All right, I know you guys didn't tune into this video to watch me dawdle and do my farm chores. So let's take a quick look at the numbers.
So I figured the best place to talk about the numbers and the business of the farm is here in my farm office. This is actually like my all-purpose office. I use it for my day job. I use it for editing videos and working on videos and live streaming, as well as just doing regular old business stuff for the farm. It all happens in this one room. So to break it down though, let's start talking about the farm and like the business lines of the farm, because when I think about how our farm makes money, there's essentially kind of like 6 or 7 businesses depending on how you want to count. There's the tree business, there's the baby bird business, there's the adult bird business, there's the fertilized eggs business, and then there's the eating eggs business, and then like I have other stuff like little special things, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. The other thing that sits out there that's a little bit outside of all of this is how I think about social media. I need to be very honest with you guys. Social media does draw income into the farm and helps support a lot of the things that we do. A lot of the investments that we've made in the farm, whether it be fencing or cattle or a tractor, have all been paid for by social media, so I don't mean to like obscure any of this, but I'm gonna keep that stuff separate for today. I don't feel like really getting into the ins and outs of it. It's kind of complicated and I don't even have a handle on all my numbers right at this moment. And the other thing is too, if I'm honest about how much we make as a farm, I want to just have our farm business stand by itself. Yes, the social media helps us market our farm products, so there is that benefit, but all the numbers I'm going to show you are really taking the costs of doing the farm and applying it to the products we sell from the farm and really trying to treat it as a true P&L or profit and loss. And so please keep that in mind. The other thing that's really complicated with all of this is like, how do I allocate costs? It costs us roughly, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20 cents a day to feed a duck, a single duck each day. And so when you think about that number and you think about the different business lines we have, you have to think about how you spread that across things like how much gets allocated to the fertilized egg operation, how much of that gets allocated to the live bird operations, how much of that gets allocated to the eating egg operations. Like each of those things takes from that cost of feeding that duck per day. And so I tried to do some just basic allocation strategies. They're very complicated and I probably won't get into them here, but just know I'm divvying those costs up amongst those different avenues that I'm working in. All of that being said, let's get into it. And the first business I want to start with is the eggs. We sell fertilized goose eggs, fertilized duck eggs, then we sell eating duck eggs and eating chicken eggs. Now let's start with the fertilized eggs. I sell 4 goose eggs that are fertilized in the mail for $55, including postage. I've sold 37 of them. I've generated about $2,000 in revenue, and it cost me a little bit less than $19 to send out each box. That's a total of about $681 in expenses, and that means that's like a net income of about $1,300. That's actually really good for us. That's been an increase of where we were last year. That's actually part of the reason why I didn't hatch out so many baby birds this year. It's a shift in my business, but I saw an opportunity and I took it. Similarly, the fertilized duck operation, that also does pretty darn well. You know, we had a total revenue of $2,300 and we ended up with a net income of about $1,489. I cannot complain when it comes to that sort of thing. You know, for $50, we sell a dozen duck eggs. That's kind of a good deal to me. The eating egg operation is really more kind of like a side hustle. It's not really a major contributor, as you can see. We made about $300 for selling duck eggs for eating this past year. We made about $86 in chicken eggs. It's just by virtue of having, you know, batches of eggs around, and we sell them. You know, I sell half a dozen duck eggs for $4, a dozen duck eggs for $6, and chicken eggs are $5 a dozen. I'm probably gonna have to increase my prices for next year just because feed costs have gone up so much. You know, if I want to kind of maintain some of these margins that you're going to see here, I wanted to do it. But all told, the egg operations contributed about $3,232.96 to our bottom line. So that's $4,800 in revenue minus $1,500 in expenses. That leaves us with that $3,200 number. I'm feeling very good about that. The second part of our business, the live birds. You know, one of the big things that I did a lot more of this year too was selling live goslings. We sell them at $30 a pop, and we sold 23 of them. You know, you could buy them in the mail through a hatchery for probably about $20 a bird. And if you think about that price, that doesn't even include shipping. And so I feel like $30 is a pretty reasonable, fair price. We made, you know, $690 in revenue from the goslings. You know, if I think about the cost of the egg and the cost of incubation and hatching, it amounts to about $11 per bird, $11.26 to be exact. And that means our net income with the goslings was $431. I do a similar thing with the ducklings, and we, you know, really only sell a handful, I think 5 ducklings in total to folks locally here. I don't ship them in the mail. You got to come to the farm to pick them up. It's a very, very small operation. And yeah, that made us $30 in net income. We also sold a few live geese, selling them at $60 a piece. We sold 8 adult geese this past year, and that brought us in $151. And we sold 6 live ducks at $50 a piece. And that $50 number is actually a little, it's $50 for a hen. It's actually, I sold 1 drake, and he was actually only $20. I don't even think I included that in here, so it's a little off, but don't worry about it. $190 in net income is the total there. So the live bird operation contributed $800 to our bottom line. Then we talk about the goose meat operation. Now, goose meat was traditionally last year the biggest part of our business, or one of the biggest parts of our business. And because we had such low hatching rates and we ended up hatching so few birds, plus the fact that I'm looking to expand my fertilized egg operation, I ended up only butchering 8 geese at the end of the year. That's a very low number relative to where I've traditionally been. You know, the upside is, you know, you make a lot of revenue. We actually were charging $14 a pound. That's some pretty good penny right there. And so if you think about our geese, right, we were actually averaging about $139 per bird. That's not exactly the number. That's when you take the 8 and you divide the revenue from it, you know, just because they ranged in weight from like 14 pounds to I think like 8 pounds was the lightest one. So there was kind of a dispersion there. But all told, that contributed about $738. The other thing I have is a little bit of a side business, and this is one of those other categories that you saw at the beginning there. What I've been doing is actually selling quills. So after I put down the birds, I will actually go through and pluck out their flight feathers. You know, those are the nice long quills at the end of the wing. I actually sold them, so $15 a pop. Over the course of this year, I've sold 16 of them, 16 packages of 5, so it's like $15 for 5. And that, you know, contributed another $121. So, you know, I'm scratching my way to profitability here on the farm. And so all told, it was $859 in net income from the goose meat operation and activities related to that. Now let's talk about our most profitable business, the thing that I know I need to do more of next year on the farm, and that's chestnut seedlings. You know, I was selling the chestnut seedlings at $7 a piece. It actually cost me only 22 cents per seedling to get it sprouted and going. I sold 385 total seedlings. That created $2,600, almost $2,700 in revenue, and ultimately had a total expense of almost $85. So when you think about the profitability of some of my other activities and what I've been doing versus this, it's crazy favorable. I think the other thing that I should really include here is from a labor perspective, it's a lot less labor intensive than other parts of the farm, right? By the time I shipped everything out and packaged everything up and dealt with folks who were coming to the farm to pick them up for purchase, I would say it ended up being about, I don't know, 12 hours of work for the entire year. Yeah, let me stress that. 12 hours of work for the entire year, an investment of about $85 netted me almost $2,600. So when I think about that, and I think about like what business should I be focusing the farm on, doing more tree seedlings will be something I absolutely expand on in 2022. No doubt about it. It's just been such good business. I enjoy the work too. You know, some of the projects you'll see me doing is increasing like my nursery space around the farm where I can actually sprout the trees, and really systematizing some things and really making it so that I can maybe quadruple or even more, to go 10 times the size from a tree seedling perspective. If I want to really be able to have a profitable farm that I can live off of, I think getting more into this space is going to be important. So when you put it all together and you start to look at things, here's what it starts to look like. You've got a big chunk of the operation in Chestnut Seedlings. That's actually the second largest business. The fertilized eggs was the biggest business. And then you got a lot of little things. And the grand total profit for the year of 2021 for our farm activities was $7,507.01. $7,500 feels pretty darn good to me. You know, we were just a little bit over $5,000 last year, so we've grown even if we did have some of those curveballs like the low hatching rates, and I'm feeling pretty darn good about it. And then if you wanted to really think about it by focus, here's what it looks like. Almost $2,800 comes from goose related activities, about $2,000 from duck related activities, and $2,600 from the chestnuts. Now, as you guys are hearing all of this, I'm sure you're asking questions around labor costs, and you're gonna say, well, wait a minute, I didn't really see you factor in labor. And actually, there was a labor line item when you look at the actual cost for processing geese, because I included my processing costs. But overall, like my farmer work activity, I didn't capture here. And so let me break down a little bit for what that labor looks like, because it's not insignificant. You know, by my calculation, it's roughly 30 hours a week of working on the farm. Sometimes it's less than that, sometimes it's more than that. But if I'm just gonna assume overall, it was about 30 hours a week over a 52-week span over 2021. I, had a business trip where I left the farm for a little over a week, but then I also had weeks where like I took weeks off from work, and I was probably working 70 hours a week on the farm. So it averages out to about 30 for 52 weeks. So if you think about that, that means that was 1,560 hours of work on the farm. And so you divide that up by the $7,500 in profit, and you essentially get down to $4.81 per hour, which is, below the minimum wage in the state of Vermont, let's just say. That actually starts to make you say, hey, is it worth it? Is it really worth it doing on the farm? And I would say for me, yes, because I love it. I think though, if I really want to think about profitability for the farm, I got to get that number up, because it's not going to be sustainable. And so focusing on some of these, higher margin, lower labor activities like growing trees is going to be really important if I want to actually make like a livable wage of, say, a target of like $20 an hour. The other thing though I should account for here is that hours number might be somewhat inflated. I shouldn't say might, it is somewhat inflated, because that includes the work I did for getting ready for the cattle. As you see all of these numbers right now, I didn't include anything, whether the costs or any of the future expected revenue from the cattle, because it's just a new business and I'm treating it like its own separate P&L. And so I carve it off and set it aside. You'll start to see me talking about what the cattle generated next year in next year's video. There's nothing to show for it this year. It's been a complete loss, but it's startup costs really. The other thing though that you should think about with my labor is when you make videos about working on a farm, it takes you a lot longer to do your farm work. And so if I was really gonna push myself, I could probably do that 30 hours of work in about 20 hours. But when you're, setting up a camera and talking while you're working and doing shots and, looking at the animals and including that in the video, it increases your hours worked. And so, there is a chunk of that time that goes into shooting the videos that you guys often see about our farm. And so that probably inflates my hours too. And so, I could actually argue that I'm probably almost up to about $10 an hour from actual farm work in terms of what we made on the farm this year. The other thing I know you guys are all gonna be wondering is, well, what about that social media stuff? We see you making YouTube videos, we see you making TikToks or Facebook videos or showing up on Instagram. We see you taking sponsorships and talking about different companies that you like. And yeah, guys, that's definitely a way I generate revenue for the farm. It's actually really how I'm thinking about generating the investment capital. So when you think about people starting up a business, right? They're usually starting up a business and, you know, taking equity investors or dipping into their savings or going to the bank and taking out a loan. We haven't done any of that. Our farm is 100% zero debt. I don't know anything. Like, our credit card gets paid off on the monthly basis. Like, there's no debt on our farm. We don't have student loans. We don't have even like a loan on the house or the farm. When we're financing things, like when I'm starting up a new business like the cattle or the beef jerky company, which is, you're gonna start to hear more and more about that over the course of next year, I'm financing that myself, and I'm using the money I make from YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, and I'm actually putting that to start the business. And so it fits into the business, but I'm not using it to like pay for the ongoing expenses. I'm using it to really fund the startup costs. There's, you know, investments in infrastructure that we've made. So fencing, for example, or the tractor. Again, you could argue that that should be ultimately a, you know, kind of something drawing down on our operations budgets, but I just try to keep it separate. I don't think I'm ever gonna necessarily report on my social media income. It's just one of those things where I think people will get all weird about it, and so I just would rather not go there. I'm sure people are gonna gripe about that in the comments, but hey, look, I feel like I'm being pretty transparent with you guys as it is by just opening up the books and showing you what the farm operations earn and how those businesses perform. I'm gonna go as far as I feel comfortable.
So all in all, I'm feeling actually pretty good about the year that we've had here in 2021. While things didn't go exactly as I'd planned and exactly as I'd hoped, they went pretty darn well. I feel like I learned a lot more. I feel like our farm grew a lot more. It's a win unto itself. I think beyond that, just the fact that we've been able to be profitable, you know, the last couple of years here on the farm as we've experimented and grown and tried to find sort of a new and different model for how we farm here at Goldshaw Farm, that to me has also been a real positive. Hey, Curdy. You know, if you look at the area that we live in here in northern Vermont, it's a very rural area. Historically, it's been very agriculturally focused, but most of those farms have been legacy dairy. And a lot of those farms in our town, I know especially, are struggling to stay profitable. Some folks are even exiting the business. And if this area wants to remain a vibrant agricultural center that it's been for the last couple hundred years, it's gonna require people testing the limits and pushing the boundaries of what normal farming actually looks like and finding new and different models for how farming can work. Kurt, were you just bucking at Ginny? Ginny Barncat's in there hanging with the cattle. She's getting quite familiar with them. And you know, part of what I'm trying to do here with Goldshaw Farm is at least offer one entry into a somewhat different model of agriculture, a model of agriculture where you produce food for the people in your area. You also can produce food for people who are not in your area, and you can actually find a way to create connections and build relationships with people in the agriculture that happens here, but spread it really all around the world. And that's kind of where the social media side of it comes into play. You know, we had a pretty easy time marketing our products this year, and I'm not gonna delude myself to say it's because I'm the best farmer in the world. I think it's because people enjoy our videos and they wanna have some sort of connection to our videos and to our farm. And so that's why we've been able to sell our products so far. And so social media has played an important role that way. And then, as I've said before too, social media plays an important role when it comes to, you know, really kind of helping support the structure of things. You know, we've been able to expand our whole operation all thanks to the power of social media. I would be absolutely misleading you guys if I didn't say that social media wasn't an important part of our farm and our farm's business strategy, both now as well as what we think about growth into the future. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at our farm. Be sure to watch another video if you want to keep learning about what we do here at Goldshaw Farm, and we'll be back with an even bigger, more ambitious plan for our farm in 2022, and I will see you guys then. Thanks.